At Argentina Crime Files, every story confronts us with a justice that leaves more questions than answers. A gunshot, a burned photo, and a clear message. Power has its own rules. The death of José Luis Cabezas was no ordinary murder. It was a declaration of war against the truth. But whose silence was being protected? José Luis Cabezas was not just a journalist. He was an inconvenient witness to power. With his camera, he captured an Argentina that preferred to remain in the shadows. His most famous and most dangerous photograph was of Alfredo Yebron, a businessman who had built an empire in the private postal and logistics sectors. Yebron controlled companies like OCA, one of the largest private postal firms in Argentina, alongside Villalonga Furlong and Cabezas, which were key players in mail and freight distribution in the country. These companies, however, were also accused of serving as fronts for illegal activities, including money laundering and smuggling. It was suspected that Yebron used these businesses to transport illicit goods and evade taxes, operations that could only thrive thanks to his connections in political and judicial circles. Yebron avoided being photographed, famously stating, "A photo of me is like aiming a gun at me." His obsession with anonymity was no coincidence. Invisibility was his greatest shield, protecting him from scrutiny that could tie his businesses to dark political and judicial alliances. Yebron was far more than just a businessman. He controlled key sectors like private postal services and logistics, but his true power lay in his connections with political, judicial, and economic elites. These alliances shielded him from scrutiny, allowing him to operate with total impunity. Companies like OCA and Cabezas were more than logistics firms. They were suspected of being gears in a larger machine of money laundering, smuggling, and tax evasion. Behind Yebron was a network of powerful political allies who, according to persistent rumors, included prominent figures in the government and Congress. This network ensured that his businesses remained untouchable and that any threat to his anonymity was silenced. It was said, touching Yebron was like touching the state itself, and José Luis Cabezas, with a single photo published in Noticias magazine, shattered that pact of silence. By exposing Yebron's face, Cabezas also unveiled the system of privilege and impunity that shielded him, sparking a violent reaction with a chilling message. Those who reveal the truths of power will pay with their lives. On January 25, 1997, José Luis Cabezas' burned body was found inside his car on a rural road in Pinamar. He had been brutally beaten, handcuffed, and executed with 2 gunshots to the head, delivering a clear message of intimidation. This was not a random act of violence. It was the direct consequence of his journalistic work. Cabezas had photographed Alfredo Yebron, a man who had built his power under a meticulously maintained veil of anonymity. The photo, published in Noticias, exposed Yebron as the face of a business empire suspected of money laundering, smuggling, and corruption. With that image, Cabezas broke the code of silence protecting Yebron and his powerful political allies. The murder of Cabezas was more than a crime. It was a calculated declaration of how power reacts when threatened. Every blow and every bullet was meant to instill fear, sending a message to journalists and society. The price of exposing hidden truths is death. This brutal act marked a turning point for press freedom in Argentina and exposed the pervasive impunity that prevails when the interests of the powerful are at stake. The investigation led to the arrest of the gang known as Los Horneros, but the true intellectual authors remained in the shadows. Alfredo Yebron was accused of being the mastermind, but before he could face justice, he took his own life under circumstances that raised more questions than answers. The scene of his alleged suicide at a family estate was riddled with unsettling inconsistencies. The weapon, the position of the body, and other details appeared meticulously arranged, as if someone had orchestrated the closure of an uncomfortable chapter. Was it a personal decision or a carefully executed act to protect others? With his death, the secrets surrounding him were buried, and the judicial system effectively closed a critical chapter without unraveling the true connections between the businessman and the country's power elite. Today, the material perpetrators are free, beneficiaries of a system that not only rewards connections with power but also normalizes silence. Yebron's death left more questions than answers and became a convenient strategy to prevent the intellectual authors from facing accountability. Meanwhile, Argentine society continues to demand transparency in a country where inconvenient truths are buried under layers of impunity. The case became a harrowing symbol of how power perpetuates itself when justice dares not confront it. The murder of José Luis Cabezas marked a turning point in the fight for press freedom in Argentina. But it also left an open wound, A conveniently timed suicide to close doors, intellectual authors who never face justice, and a system that refuses to look upward toward the true centers of power. Impunity remains the strongest message. That is why we cannot stay silent. Leave your comments, subscribe to the channel, and discover more cases like this, where the shadows of power intertwine with a system that rarely reaches the truth. Because sometimes, remembering is the only way to seek justice.